word of prayer. Lord, thank you so much for this day. We pray that you'll bless our time together and that you'll give us understanding of some of the things that are going on and how they fit into Bible prophecy. Bless us today in Jesus' name, amen. Well, today, as you know, if you've been following the news at all, there was a big attack from Hezbollah in the north of Israel, so we're going to talk a lot about that. Hundreds of rockets, missiles, and some cheap drones fired at Israel. Well, I'll tell you all about it in just a moment. So again, grid that I look at things through: acceleration, convergence, logistics, and understanding. So when we see all of these wars that are prophesied, for example, you'll see a lot of articles, videos, and everything about Ezekiel 38, 39. Now, I don't think we're there. Other people think that Ezekiel 38 and 39 is imminent. But when you read Ezekiel 38 and 39, and by the way, there's some people who don't think Ezekiel 38 and 39 happens for at least 1,007 years. Now, I don't agree with that. They look at the verse in Revelation that says about a Gog war at the end of the millennium. And then they say, well, then there's Gog in Ezekiel 38 and 39, so it has to be all the way at the end of the millennium. It can't be two of them. There can only be one, which violates a principle about the way Jewish prophecy is patterned. Sometimes there's double fulfillment. Sometimes there's a lot of partial fulfillment, and then there's a complete fulfillment. And that's the way Jewish prophecy works. But people don't understand that. A lot of Jewish rabbis, and I know they're not saved, but they're looking at the scriptures, and some of them think that Gog-Magog is getting very close. I don't think it's imminent. I think it's a little ways off, because one of the things it talks about there is that there's a great company and a mighty army. And we just don't see that right at the moment in the north of Israel. And then the question is Russia involved? Is that where this army from the north comes from, Gog, Magog? It could be. I kind of think that it is, but I think it involves the Stan republics of Central Asia. And I've said this for a long time. If you've been around the class I used to teach at another church, I've been saying this for 25 years at least, that if it's Russia, why would Russia come in to do this? Now, I've suggested there's a couple reasons. Putin has said that one of the reasons he's going into Ukraine is to protect ethnic Russians. And what do they have in Israel is, 1 or 2 million ethnic Russians, particularly in the north. So would he say, is that one of the hooks that draws Russia in? I don't think it's oil and gas. That's my assessment of the situation. Israel has a lot of gas in terms of what Israel needs, and maybe supplying some other people, but Russia, the nation of Russia is often described as a gas station with a country attached, because they have a lot of oil. I mean, they have, 1,600 times the amount of known gas reserves that Israel has, by most estimates that I've seen. So I just don't think they're going to come down for more oil and gas. They've got enough trouble managing what they have and getting at the market. They have, for example, they want to sell to China, and they really can't sell to China because they don't have a pipeline. And they've talked about building a pipeline, but there's been a lot of impediments to that, and it's got to be a long pipeline. I saw by the way, on Twitter, this is completely off the topic, but on Twitter, I can't remember the name of the site. There's a Twitter account that puts up unique maps. And what it does is it shows like the map of the world that we see all the time. Russia's like this giant country, but it's big, but it's about 4 times as big as it really is on that, what they call the Mercator projection on maps. Greenland is like huge, so is Canada, but they're really much, much smaller in reality. In fact, Africa is much, much larger Africa is close to the size of all of Asia, and maybe bigger, I don't know. But But we put the political ideas we have, like, well, Europe and Russia, United States, or the West is more important, so we get bigger maps. So that's a very interesting thing, and you should go look at that map. It's very interesting. So back to Ezekiel 38 and 39. One of the problems with shoving it all the way to the end of the millennium is in Ezekiel 38 and 39, it talks about what? Burning the weapons for 7 years. Well, how do you burn the weapons for 7 years at the end of the millennium? When I think everybody would agree by then you're going to have a new heaven and new earth. And then what happens then is, well, we'll spiritualize the 7 years. It's a perfect time of God's judgment for that. So that's one of the problems we get. So a lot of things going on. And I did not do a midweek update. I apologize for that. I was just busy this week. And I'll be doing some interviews this week with some people. And then just so you know, coming up September 6th and 7th in Woodland Hills, California, I'll be doing one of the speakers at the Tip of the Spear Conference. Brian Holthouse, Tom Hughes. I think Alex Newman's going to be. Alex Newman, Lee Brainerd, a bunch of other people. So, and I apologize for anybody that I forgot. Bill Salas. And then I'll also be speaking at 412 Church in Temecula on Sunday the 8th and in the evening. Then I think on the 9th or 10th, Tom Hughes and Bill Salas and I are going to do a roundtable while I'm out in California. So that's coming up. Then the end of September, you'll want to know that, especially if you go here to Fellowship Bible Chapel. I'll be doing a conference with Mike Spalding, Barry Stagner, and Patrick Wood, and some others that I can't remember, over at Brookville, Ohio, the Fall Go Therefore Conference. It's put on by Calvary Chapel, Lima, Ohio. And then Patrick Wood will be speaking here on Sunday morning. So a lot of things going on. And then I will also be speaking in early November, right after the election, assuming we haven't had global thermonuclear war by then, at the End of the World Conference out in California in Temecula. So, I mean, if you're going to name a conference, you might as well pick something that's going to grab people's attention, the End of the World Conference. So, and this is one of the things we look at a lot every Sunday. I remind people of this, is the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Daniel wants to know what's going on. When's all this going to happen? And he's told Daniel, it's not for you to know. In the future, at the time of the end, people will understand. I think people will be going back and forth through the book of prophecy, and they will have more wisdom and understanding of how these things are working out. And I had a great conversation with a longtime friend yesterday. He stopped by the house, and
you'll need to unlock your iPad first.
I'm not sure why that came up, but and I was sort of showing him all the things that I get from people. I mean, and Pam will attest to this, stacks of books and papers and documents, and everybody's sure that this is how it's going to work out. But the interesting thing is, they don't really agree very much. So I do think we're not at this point yet where everybody's going to understand exactly what's going on. I mean, and there are, and each week I get sent about anywhere from 50 to 150 hours of videos to watch. And by the way, if you're going to send me a video, I'm not going to watch it unless you give me like a bullet point summary of what's in it, and maybe some timestamps, because as you know, there's not a lot of extra hours in the day these days. So anyways, enough of the intro, and we'll be talking about how some of these things work out as we go forward. And so today we're going to be focused on Israel, particularly the north of Israel, but also down here in the Gaza Strip. And by the way, the red, it just was on a map that I pulled up that had all the different attacks that took place on October 7th. And so here we are, what are we, almost 11 months past October 7th. And the thing has not been resolved. But now I'm going to talk a bit about Gaza because it's important, but I'm going to talk about the north first. And so I did update my map a little bit with 2 cheap chess pieces of Israel and Iran, because this is what this war is about. This is really an Iran war against Israel. So when you look at all the different all these different fronts that Israel has, they've got Gaza, they've got Lebanon, Hezbollah, they've got Syria, Hezbollah, and other Islamic militias. They have the West Bank, they have the Houthis, they have Iraq, they have Iran, and then they have the whole. By the way, have you noticed that the world media and a lot of Twitter accounts and everything seem to be very much against Israel? My Twitter feed is a sewer of Jew hatred. And I don't know why I'm getting it. I don't know if they think they can persuade me, or I pause long enough to look at the garbage that they send me and I think, oh, he must want to see that, so we'll send him even more of it. I don't know. But it's unbelievable, the stuff that I'm seeing. So let's put a context on what's happening in Israel right as we speak. And if you hear, I was playing around with some red alert apps. There's one app that I use. It's called Zofar, like shofar, Tzofar. You can download it to your phone, and then it will. I have mine on silent, but I was playing around with another part of it on my computer, so you may hear some buzzing or dings or something, which means that there's attacks or confrontations going on in Israel. So Zofar is a good red alert app. And this morning I woke up early. I always get up early on Sunday morning. But before I got up, like at 1 a.m. in the morning, my red alert app is just going off like crazy because there were confrontations, hundreds of rockets. But so Israel, a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, took out 2 very important people. They took out the number 2 guy in Hezbollah, Shakur, and everybody's been after him for 40 years. He was very much involved in the planning of the attack on the Marine barracks in 1982 or 83 in Beirut, in which over 250 U.S. Marines were killed in a big bombing that took place. So Shakur was very much involved in that, and Israel took him out. Now, it was very interesting. There's some, Monday, the Wall Street Journal had a big article on that. Don't have time to go into it. If you can get a hold of the Wall Street Journal article, probably behind a paywall, but do the best you can. Very good article about how they took him out. He was in an apartment. I think he lived on the 2nd floor in an 8-story building. They said, you need to come up to the 8th floor. He got a phone call, and he went up to the 8th floor, and boom, they took him out in an attack, and it didn't really kill that many people. As if they'd hit him on the 2nd floor, the whole building might have collapsed. And so it was a fairly precise strike by Israel. And of course, Hezbollah has been saying we're going to do vengeance since then. And then just a few days later, Israel took out Ismail Haniyeh, who was the political leader of Hamas. He was someone who, it appears, Seth Frantzman had a very good article in the Jerusalem Post about this, that they were grooming him to become the head of the Palestinian Authority. Because he was more political than Sinwar, who is just a nasty, evil, awful human being. Even though Ismail Haniyeh was a nasty, awful human being, everybody thought, well, he's clean shaven, his beard is always nicely trimmed, and you don't get a beard like that unless you're going to the barber every day. And he was a multi-billionaire living in a 6-star hotel in Qatar, and they took him out. He was staying in an Iranian Revolutionary Guard building in Tehran, highly secure, maybe one of the most secure buildings in Tehran, because this is where the IRGC puts visitors that are important to them, and they took him out. Now, the word is that how they did that was they smuggled a bomb in there months before he was there and planted the bomb in that building. Now, nobody's really taken credit for taking out this monster of a guy. So we can pretty much have a good idea to guess who it is. It's probably not the IRGC. And he was there for the inauguration of the new Iranian president, replacing the one who had been killed in a helicopter crash a few months ago. And now everybody's sort of going back and looking at that helicopter crash like, was that just an old, not well-maintained helicopter, or did somebody take out the helicopter? You can make the case on either one of those at this point. There wasn't much left of the helicopter, so it's kind of hard to piece it back together. But in any event, Hania was there in Tehran, and they took him out in this strike. And I believe that his bodyguard was the only other person killed. There were other people in the area. It was a very precise strike. There are other people in the rooms near him, and my understanding is it only hurt that room that he was sleeping in. So everybody's been saying, we're going to do something, we're going to avenge this, we're going to do revenge, it's coming, it's coming. Nasrallah from Hezbollah, he's been saying in some of his talks and tweets, and you can follow him he has an English Twitter account that you can read his propaganda and nonsense that he puts out all the time. We're going to avenge this. But when they didn't do anything, the Arab world's going, the Islamic world, why aren't you guys doing anything? Why are you letting Israel get away with this? And Nasrallah said, waiting is part of the punishment. So he has an answer, like good propagandist, he has an answer for everything. So there was a series of headlines in the Tehran Times, which is an Iranian propaganda newspaper, but I read this because you want to know what they're thinking, what they're saying. That's why I look at this. So this is from a few days ago. It's coming. Iran's retaliation against Israel, a matter of when, not if. Now, there's been a lot of back and forth among analysts is why didn't they respond right away? When they took out Hania, my email was full of people saying, the attack's going to come today, or within the next 2 days, there's going to be a massive thing, and we're going to be in World War III in 2 days. But sometimes you just need to kind of think like an Iranian. And what they're doing is they want to keep people under stress in Israel, thinking about it. And for a while, people in Israel were really stressed out about it. Is it coming? What do I do? And then Israel and the people in Israel started putting up pictures of them going to coffee shops, going to the beach in Tel Aviv, and other things, living a fairly normal life, further away from the border. The problem has been, and continues to be, that 80,000, this is the most commonly given number, 80,000 Israelis in the north have evacuated their homes. I was watching things about 3 days ago. There was a big attack, 100 missiles. But if you follow these missile attacks, they've all been in about a 5-mile strip. Most of them have been in a 5-mile strip along the Israeli border. There are 45 villages and towns that have been completely evacuated, emptied out. They had an article in one of the papers yesterday about a guy who's still living, the last man in Metula. And Metula is a town of 5,000, 8,000 people, and it's kind of in this little triangle, like right up in it's got, Syria and Lebanon. It's like wedged in there. And it's probably got more border with Syria, Lebanon area than it does with Israel. And so there's one guy left up there. Kiryat Shimona, hardly anybody lives there. Somebody went up there, trying to remember somebody that I know of or know, they went up there. And they're traveling around northern Israel, and they go to Kiryat Shimona, and there's one restaurant open. In Kiryat Shimona is 25,000 people. They have a water park. They've got like Walmart type stores where you can try to figure out how to pump gas on a pump in Hebrew. I wasn't successful, by the way. So it's just emptied out up there. But a few days ago, the rockets went further into Israel than they had before. So I was messaging with Brian Schrager, and I go, it looks like they're trying to expand the area of evacuation. Now remember, a few months ago, I showed you a picture of a poster in Palestinian Square in Tehran that had writings on the rockets in the poster and said, are you ready for 2 million displaced people? So it was an indication back then that what Iran and Hezbollah, Iran wanted to do through its proxy, Hezbollah, was expand the area of evacuation. What are they doing when they do that? They're shrinking Israel. And Israel's a pretty small country. You can't take 80,000 people and just move them to the south. You got housing, you got all kinds of problems. And so the people that are evacuated, they're trying to some of them were up in the Galilee region where they used to live, trying to set up schools for their children because school starts in a few weeks. Actually in about less than 2 weeks, a week now. And this will be the second year that their children will not be going to school. And the parents are very concerned about that because down south, they just haven't been able to accommodate them. So they're setting up schools. Now Hezbollah starts bombing missiles, rockets a little bit further south. They're shrinking Israel. That's led some commentators. One guy you should look up on YouTube is a guy named Gadi Taub, T-A-U-B. First name Gadi, G-A-D-I. He's a historian. Used to be a leftist. And then he had that, what was the old saying? He got mugged. And he left this as a former leftist who got mugged is now a conservative. And he's a very important voice in Israel. He's very articulate. He does a bi-weekly update with Michael Doron from the Hudson Institute called Israel Update. Pretty unique name, right? And so Gadi this week, he was on some other programs and he was talking about what Israel needs to do is start occupying their land. So he's advocating take over a third of the Gaza Strip for Israel. Now, the question is, do you put Israeli Jews in there to live like Israeli Jews used to live in Gaza? Not too many years ago, people remember, I used to go down to Gaza to go to the restaurant, to go to the beach. And now that's completely done. So Israel evacuated Gaza in 2005 under pressure from the Bush administration during the time when Ariel Sharon was prime minister. And those people there was about 10,000 people that had to evacuate, 10 or 12,000 had to evacuate, leave their homes, leave their farms, and move elsewhere in Israel. Well, now we have 80,000. They're shrinking Israel. And I would say, nobody would agree with me, but that's okay. What Israel should be doing is, for everybody that gets evacuated in the north, they ought to go into Judea, Samaria, called the West Bank, and take 10 times that amount of land and make settlements out of it. Because the only way I know how this ends, but in human terms, they have to win decisively and humiliate the people on the other side. That's the only way that this is ever going to end. And remember, if Israel looks strong, what do Islamists do when the enemy is strong? They make a peace treaty. And the peace treaty, though, is a ruse. It's a deception. It's called a hudna. In fact, there was a few years back, some of the Palestinian Authority people were saying, we need to do a hudna. We need to do a peace agreement with Israel. And the article said, we need to do this for 7 to 10 years. Now, that's kind of an interesting number in Bible prophecy. So, is that what's going to be done? But you do that, and then you build up your forces while you're at peace, supposedly at peace. Then you come back and attack. You break the hudna, the peace agreement, and attack your enemy. Now, you can make the case, and I think you can make a pretty strong case, that seems to sound like what's going on in Daniel and the covenant with many and that type of thing. Now, there's a lot, but believe me, you don't need to send me emails. I know you disagree with that. Okay? Let's see how it plays out. That might be, and I could be, my speculation could turn out to be totally incorrect. It's a pretty small possibility, though, but no, I'm just kidding. So anyway, so Iran's out there, it's coming, and now they have this Muslim festival about the Imam Hussein, and they're slamming Israeli war crimes, and they're marching down the street by the thousands carrying Palestinian flags and a giant Palestinian Authority flag. And they're saying, we're gonna do something that's coming, Israel, you need to watch. So this is a map. This was in the Financial Times recently, I guess back at the end of July. And this shows the attacks. On the north side, those are attacks by Israel. On the south side, those are attacks by Hezbollah. And you can see the extent of the Hezbollah attacks has been pretty limited. Again, that was done to get Israel to leave, get Israelis to leave that area, shrink Israel. Now, those attacks by Israel in southern Lebanon have shrunk Lebanon, because probably 120,000 or more people that lived in southern Lebanon have left. The people who've stayed are Hezbollah. Sarit Zahavi and the people at Alma Research, who I've been pleased to interview a few times, they say, listen, the before all this started back on October 7th, every other home and building in southern Lebanon was tied to Hezbollah in some way. Tunnel entrance, tunnel exit, missile launcher, logistics, supplies, Hezbollah, and they live there with their families. They've embedded themselves just like they did in Gaza. They have a lot of civilians around them. So this morning, this was also a tweet this morning to kind of explain what's been going on. A senior Hezbollah official told Reuters that their response to the assassination of Fouad Shakur had been delayed several times due to political reasons, mainly the ongoing ceasefire negotiations. I don't know why. This guy seems to capitalize a lot of letters that I don't think, words that don't need to be capitalized. With today's attack said to have been limited to avoid a full-scale war. And so today's attack was somewhat limited. Here's an article by Ron Ben Yishai, who's really one of the better journalists, military journalists, security analysts that writes for newspapers in Israel. I would put Seth Franzman and Jonathan Spire up there with him. And he says Israeli alert, intelligence thwarted the Hezbollah plan and possibly prevented the regional war. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened, but here's a basic summary. Israel got word, some are saying it got word through American intelligence, and we have a lot of assets in the region, that an attack from Hezbollah was coming, a massive attack. They were readying the attack. It was going to happen at 5 a.m. in the morning. So Israel had meetings, leadership went into bunkers, secure buildings, Israeli cabinet. They met and they said, okay, we will strike first. This is what happened back in the 67 war, if you remember. All the Arab armies were going to attack Israel, and Israel just said, we're tired of waiting. We're going to attack now. So they attacked 100 planes, missiles, that type of thing, shot into Lebanon. And so what happened was the attack was not as severe as it could have been. A lot of people think that Israel taking the initiative and doing that prevented the escalation into a major regional war. Now, you're going to hear some other analysts say, fine, the only way this is resolved is by a major regional war, which could lead into a world war. Well, let me put it this way. We are probably already in the early stages of a world war. It would be interesting to go back to 1938, 39, and even back into the time of the First World War, and like 1914, 1915, and see who was the first person to say this is the First World War, or in the 40s or 30s, this is the Second World War. It took a while for people to kind of really realize, hey, we're in a world war. I think we're at that stage right now with all the turmoil and everything that's going on so many levels. So these are some pictures from this morning. Here's a video from Ynet. And you can see these are missiles coming in. You see the Iron Dome missiles going up and shooting them down. But now remember, though, every time one of those Iron Dome missiles goes up, that's probably $75,000 to $100,000 flying through the air there. And the rockets and missiles that are being shot down might only cost $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000. So the economics don't work. You can't continue to do that forever. Hezbollah, because it's tied to Iran, Iran has developed the Shahed 101 drone. And that's been used extensively by Russia in Ukraine against the Ukrainians. But the drones that were used today were not that sophisticated. And that's not even a super sophisticated drone anyway. It's just cheap. It makes a lot of noise. It's got like a little 1 or 2 cylinder engine on it, and it comes flying in. It sounds like sort of like a cheap motorcycle or something. And it causes terror because you hear that thing coming and you wonder, is it going to hit me? That's part of the whole point. So there were some missiles. This is a Israeli jet pursuing one of these drones. You can find the pictures, and they took it out. And you can see it's kind of a big explosion. That drone's not going to hurt anybody. But all of that comes at a cost. So there are 100 Israeli jets up this morning, taking off in a very short period of time. And really, most of what Israel did, they did in just minutes. Here's a statement by the IDF spokesperson.
A short while ago, the IDF identified Hezbollah terrorist organization preparing to fire missiles, rockets towards Israeli territory. In a self-defense act to remove these threats, the IDF is striking terror targets in Lebanon from which Hezbollah was planning to launch their attacks on Israeli civilians. This follows more than 6,700 rockets, missiles, and explosive UAVs fired by Hezbollah at Israeli families, homes, and communities since October 8th. Hezbollah will soon fire rockets and possibly missiles and UAVs towards Israeli territory. We will shortly update the Homefront Command defensive guidelines for those in Israel. From right next to the homes of Lebanese civilians in the south of Lebanon, we can see that Hezbollah is preparing to launch an extensive attack on Israel, while endangering the Lebanese civilians. We warn the civilians located in the areas where Hezbollah is operating to move out of harm's way immediately for their own safety. Hezbollah's ongoing aggression risks dragging the people of Lebanon, the people of Israel, and the whole region into a wider escalation. Israel will not tolerate Hezbollah's attacks on our civilians. We are operating in self-defense from Hezbollah and any other enemy that joins in their attacks against us. And we are ready to do everything we need to defend the people of Israel.
So here's, this is a video of one of the Israeli attacks today. And you can see they're very precise in the way they do this. They took out a lot of enemies. In the Hezbollah and Israel have really been in a low-level war since October 7th. Hezbollah has fired thousands of missiles, approaching 10,000 missiles, rockets, and drones into Israel since that time. Out of their arsenal before the war of about 150,000, now that missile, by the way, I don't think it's a zero-sum game. It's not like they fire a missile and then they have one less. They're getting constantly resupplied by Israel. They're making some on their own. Some of the drones today look like they've been made locally by Hezbollah. Here's another video. And so this was going on all over southern Lebanon today. Now you'll see one here. You'll see a little... there you see this rocket. So when Israel blew up the rocket launcher, the rocket got launched through the explosion, or it was launched just before the explosion took place. Here is that's from Nasrallah's account. Oh, here it is. I have the video. So this is a drone coming into northern Israel. This is taken by somebody associated with Hezbollah, or a video that Hezbollah got a hold of. And you can see some of the areas of attack along the border. Over here into the Golan, Katsrin was hit again. And there were several hundred rockets, and you get this alert for all of these things. So this was a big deal. I'll talk in a moment about Sinwar. This is a report that came out of the Washington Post. One thing you need to understand is there's a tremendous amount of propaganda flowing through news channels. So there's a guy that he's got the name, the White House stenographer. His name is Barak Ravid, and he writes for one of the newspapers in Israel. And it seems like it's like, if Tony Blinken wants to get a message out, he just picks up the phone and calls Barak Ravid, and Barak Ravid is a good little guy, and he'll publish it without checking it or anything like that. So he puts out the American propaganda, and there is American propaganda, we all know that. It's going through Barak Ravid. It also goes through, this report was based on a article by David Ignatius in the Washington Post on Wednesday or Thursday, saying that Sinwar, he's scared, he's hiding out. This is according to U.S. officials. He's running out of supplies, and that's why he maybe wants to enter into an agreement. This is Nasrallah's English account, and he just says, this is the statement that they made: we will take revenge on the criminals. And what did he put up, though, is he put up the red flag of vengeance. So when Hania was attacked and killed a couple weeks ago in Tehran, there's an important mosque in Iran, and they raised the red flag of vengeance. That's not something that they do that often. So here's Nasrallah putting that up. Here's a video that they put up. So Hezbollah is getting, by the way, I've been following Hezbollah and their propaganda and their videos and the things that they put up, and they've really upped their game a little bit. They're actually putting things up in high definition now. that has the 16:9 aspect ratio for videos that everybody uses. Nasrallah is supposed to give a big speech today. Probably will start, may have already started. So you can go to Al-Manar today or tomorrow and you can find out what he had to say. I'm sure he'll be talking about how bold Hezbollah is going to be from his underground bunker that he never emerges from. So you can see what they did was they took pictures of a Israeli barracks and bases, and they put them up and said, we're going to attack them. And they did try to send missiles and drones into there. And so if you looked at just Al-Manar or Al-Akbar newspaper in Lebanon, you would think that Hezbollah just had this massively successful operation this morning. And they really accomplished nothing. I think there was one soldier in Israel killed by flying shrapnel. That's all that I'm aware of right now. Here's a tweet also from Nasrallah's account. The enemy's claims about the preemptive action it carried out and the targets it achieved in its disruption of the resistance's attack are empty claims that will be refuted in a speech by Secretary General of Hezbollah, Syed Hassan Nasrallah, today. So he's going to talk today. He's going to get up and give his propaganda speech. We'll take revenge on the criminals. With the help of God Almighty, all the offensive, this is from Al-Manar article on this, with the help of God Almighty, all the offensive marches were launched at the time specified for them and from all their positions and crossed the Lebanese-Palestinian border towards the desired, notice how they say Lebanese-Palestinian border. They never mention Israel. They always refer to Israel as the enemy entity, the criminals. They never really use it by name. And what also do you see in all of the Hezbollah posts? Jerusalem, the Temple Mount, the Dome of the Rock. And by the way, as I've said many times, that is based on a total, complete fabrication. It really came about in the 60s. Why? Because Israel won the 67 war. They took back the Temple Mount for a period of time. And so now they had to invent this whole narrative about how, oh, the Temple Mount is where Muhammad came on the night journey and ascended to heaven. And Mordecai Kedar and Saudi Arabian Islamic scholars say that's just a bunch of nonsense. That's not where it happened. It was always thought to be somewhere down in the area of Mecca, Medina, in Saudi Arabia that this night journey took place. And I'm only saying, assuming that it took place, that's where they said it happened for like 1,200 years. They said that that's where it happened. Then Israel came back, became a nation. Now they have a problem. So it's all a lie. So they say, with the help of God Almighty, all the offensive things are doing, the enemy's claims about the preemptive action and the targets achieved in its disruption of the resistance's attack are empty claims that contradict the facts on the ground. And they'll be refuted today by this guy. Sharit Zahavi put up a pretty good article. She talked about some of the places where Hezbollah is being neutralized. Israel has taken out between 400 and 500 Hezbollah operatives, commanders, very important people in the Hezbollah structure across Lebanon, trying to disrupt their plans. But they've probably given people below them a lot of authority and training and that type of thing. So there is no way that this gets resolved without an Israeli ground invasion. But as of now, there was an Israeli ground invasion in the Second Lebanon War in 2006, and Israel, I don't know how many thousand people in Lebanon were killed. Hezbollah lost 300 or so fighters. They've already killed more than that without the ground invasion. So warfare's changed. You know, they can do these exact missile strikes. They can, the missile appeared to come from there, boom, then they'll shoot a missile right down the launch tube. So how does this go? So Zohreh Zahavi, she was the one who was up there. Listen to what she says. She lives in the north. She says, this visit in the north was unlike any other I've had in this region before. She's lived there all of her life. The Upper Galilee, especially the Naphtali Mountains, has always been a place of rare natural green beauty in my eyes. In winter, the almond trees bloom, painting the landscape with vibrant colors. But on Sunday, the scene was starkly different. The once green mountain now stood charred. Its once flourishing earth turned a sorrowful shade of brown. As we entered Kiryat Shimona, a city usually bustling with life, I was struck by the emptiness. The streets were deserted as if time had stopped. It was a chilling reminder of the empty cities we saw during the height of the Charlie Vector situation. Charlie Vector 019er. The silence was both haunting and painful, a stark contrast to the vibrant life that used to fill these streets. Looking around, the scars of war were evident everywhere. Kindergarten directly hit, yards and homes burned, and cars reduced to charred flames. The city has not been destroyed, but it is certainly wounded. We went to eat at the only open restaurant in town, a small place that somehow still stood. Most of the diners were soldiers grabbing a meal before heading back to the front lines. During the meal, we spoke with some of them. They experienced a fierce desire to see Hezbollah across the border defeated and made it clear that they longed to see the Galilee thrive again, to return to bring a place of life and peace. Nobody's going to go back there unless this situation is resolved. That shrinks Israel. That is unacceptable. And so, as I said, Gadi Taub and others are saying, okay, look, we have to evacuate our place. We're taking your land. What do you think is your land? Fight us for it. We'll fight you. I don't know how they do it. Our journey continued to be to a quiet community close to the border that has faced significant damage from the conflict. While we were there, in a safe zone, an air raid siren sounded. Followed by the echo of explosions from a nearby town, we learned that some of the rockets were also falling within Lebanese territory. Remember? Same thing in Gaza. About 30% of the rockets fired from Gaza towards Israel never left Gaza. In fact, there's a rather famous one hitting a hospital, injuring some people. And then, of course, what happened? New York Times, Wall Street Journal, 100 people were, it's always 100 people. It's always 90 or 100. It's sort of like Macy's pricing. You know, Macy's never says it's $10, it's always $9.95. I think that's Macy's pricing. And that's the way it works with the propaganda coming out of Gaza. So go to Alma Research, Israel-alma.org, and you can read Zohreh Zahavi's great article about how this has been a big problem. Now, this morning on the BBC, this is about a 5-minute clip. I'm going to play a clip of Amir Avivi from the Israeli Defense and Security Forum, and they ask him, what happened and what do we do? And here's that interview.
I'll speak to Amir Avivi, former Israel Brigadier General at the Israeli Defense Forces. Thank you for your time. Could you put into context for us, from what you understand, the information that Israel has responded to and the ongoing situation at the border here?
Since the targeting of Shuker, which was the chief of staff of Hezbollah said all along it's going to retaliate. The IDF was in a very high alert in the last few weeks, and early in the morning there was very accurate intelligence saying that Hezbollah is going to launch ballistic missiles to Tel Aviv, to specific targets. The IDF launched a preemptive attack of more than 100 airplanes targeting all these sites where Hezbollah wanted to shoot those missiles. And the shooting we are seeing now from Hezbollah, it's not what they planned to do. What they planned to do was foiled. They are shooting from South Lebanon, a very inaccurate shooting. They were caught by surprise. Israel has very, very good intelligence. Hezbollah is completely penetrated. And we see a preemptive attack, but again, it's not a full-scale war. It's a preemptive attack against specific intelligence, against specific sites of Hezbollah where they wanted to shoot.
And in terms of the airport, we've now learned that the Ben Gurion Airport is resuming operations. From what you would surmise from this, is it that that immediate threat that Israel was concerned about, in their view, is now over?
Yes, there was an immediate threat to shoot the center of Israel. This is why they closed the airport. Now it has reopened. And as long as there is no new intelligence, I guess it will stay open. At the moment in Israel, from Tel Aviv to the north, life is continuing as usual, but the people, what the army said to the people is keep alert, make sure that you know where to go to if there is a siren. But overall, life at the moment is as usual.
Now, the New York Times is reporting that those preparations for an attack on Israel included a possible attack on Tel Aviv. We know that a state of emergency has been declared in Israel. How would you characterize the level of safety, of security inside Israel in cities as prominent as Tel Aviv?
Well, we have a very, very strong air defense that is capable of defending. Also, we can see that the IDF is acting proactively and making sure that they foil this kind of attacks before Hezbollah manages to shoot. And I think that we're getting closer to the point where Israel will have to go to a full-scale war and deal with Hezbollah. We have to understand the reality on the ground. For 10 months, 80,000 Israelis have left home. They are in hotels. They cannot go back home. It's similar to what the Britain experienced in World War II, when many people were evacuated from London to other areas because of the war. This is what Israel is experiencing now. And it's very hard to see a diplomatic solution that will make Hezbollah withdraw from South Lebanon according to Resolution 1701. And without international pressure, eventually Israel will have to deal with Hezbollah on a full-scale war and push Hezbollah out of South Lebanon in order to create the terms that will enable to bring back our citizens safely to their home in the north.
Amir Avivi, what you're talking about is a very serious escalation if you're talking about a full-scale war between Hezbollah and Israel. Could you lay out what that would mean for the region, but also how this would pull out so many people around the world? I mean, surely this is something that Israel would want to avoid as much as other countries would.
Well, I mean, the problem is we have 80,000 citizens evacuated for 10 months. We need to bring them back home. Now, I don't see, unfortunately, any international pressure to prevent this war, in the sense that there is no international pressure on Hezbollah to withdraw from South Lebanon, according to a UN resolution, Resolution 1701, that says that Hezbollah cannot be in South Lebanon on the Israeli borders. Israeli citizens will not go back home if they have a threat similar to what the citizens in the South experience from Hamas, meaning a terror organization on our border. So without international pressure, we'll probably find ourselves at a certain moment in a war, which can be prevented if the international community will pressure Iran and Hezbollah. And if this doesn't happen, this might escalate to a full-scale regional war, including Iran. This is why the US has brought many forces. There is a big coalition at the moment in the Middle East to try to avoid a war and also to defend Israel if Iran will shoot as well. So yes, these are very defining moments, and this might impact the whole globe, talking about oil prices, talking about riots in different places of radical Muslims across Europe. So it's definitely a very sensitive time.
All right, Amir Avivi, former Israel Brigadier General, thank you so much.
Listen, I've been blessed to spend a lot of time with General Avivi over the last couple of years talking to them. He really has a very realistic, solid analysis of what needs to happen. And I was talking to some people from IDSF this week on the phone. It's a very serious situation that Israel faces. And I agree with General Avivi. There's no way the people are going to come home unless Hezbollah is eradicated. So this was on the IDSF daily briefing on Thursday. You can go to the IDSF YouTube channel and follow these daily briefings or sign up for the Zoom notice. They're at 10 a.m. Eastern. And they're unlike certain people who do prophecy updates that might extend beyond the 30-minute time limit. They are very good at keeping to the 20. They actually even finish early some days. It's a miracle. I don't know how they do it. But they're Moshe Davis is, they're very disciplined, who runs that they're very disciplined about that. But you'll get a lot of information. So this is, I think his name is Issachar, Dr. Issachar, who talks about can Iran, he talked about Thursday, can Iran sustain a war with Israel? I mean, Iran has a troubled economy. They have a lot of unemployment. They're very tied to oil. And at some point, there was a big message sent by Israel a few weeks ago. Remember, they flew 1,200 miles or 1,600 miles down to the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula to Yemen, and they took out a massive port. That port, I should have put some pictures up, that port was destroyed. It will take years for Yemen to build that back. They're losing $1 million or more a day from that port being closed. But that's 1,600 miles. Now, an F-35 can't fly that far. It has to be refueled, and it has to be refueled to get back. Planes don't fly very well without fuel in the tanks. And Israel has like 50, like we do, a lot of 50, 60-year-old air refuelers. I would say that were built by Boeing back when Boeing built planes that didn't have doors falling off of them in the middle of the flight, but that would be kind of churlish on my part to do that, I guess. But facts are facts. By the way, those astronauts aren't coming home for a while now because there's a Boeing capsule up there, and NASA said not safe for them to come back on that. They have to wait till February. So that's 6 months. They're going to spend extra time. They're going to spend up there, 2 of them at the space. I don't know, whatever it is, up there, space station or whatever they have up there now. So, but the attack on the Yemen port was a message. You have to see when the action is just not attacking a port. Attacking the port is sending a message to the Ayatollah regime in Iran that, listen, that's 1,600 miles away. You're less than 1,200 miles away. If we did that to them, we can do that to you. And we don't care what air defenses you have or anything like that, because we can scramble them and make them blind. And we're coming. And one of the places they may go, there's nuclear facilities in Bashir. Bill Salas has written a lot about that, about the prophecy of Elam and Isaiah 49. Some people think that's been fulfilled. I happen to disagree with that. Again, double fulfillment idea in Jewish prophecy. And then there's the Karg Island oil terminal. That's how Iran gets its oil out to the world. They have very long, very big contracts with China. They were doing 300,000 barrels a day. Now they're doing over 2 million. That's a lot of revenue to the Iranian regime. And I think at some point you will see Israel will take that facility out unless Iran agrees to back down. But this is a theological thing with them. They believe, the Ayatollah regime and the people in the IRGC, they believe that if they cause Armageddon, the Mahdi will return. And that's what they think. We can bring about the end times. And that's what they'll do. So this is a lady who spent some time undercover, I guess, in Iran. And this is a big article in the Telegraph last Sunday. The West is failing to take Iran seriously out of sheer ignorance, and it's true. Here's just some articles. This is from The Spectator in the UK. Israel strikes on Lebanon bring Jerusalem one step closer to regional dominance. Now, I don't know that I agree with that. because there's a whole lot more that needs to happen. We have a tendency in the West, we're thinking about the election in November. The Ayatollahs are thinking about the end of the world. And maybe it'll take 100 years. They don't care. That's all they want to accomplish. In Israel, so Seth Frantzman has a great new book out on October 7th. I don't remember the name of the, hang on a second here. It's called The October 7 War. And he has a great tweet today about, and I think what Seth is doing is he's writing about things that other people have, he's writing about them in a way that I think needs to be written about them. I've tried to engage some people on that, and I haven't been very successful because everybody talks about the day after. What are we going to do on the day after the war with Hamas? And my question has been, okay, that's fine, but what should you have done the day before or the year before leading up to October 7th? Now, a lot of people say, well, we knew that there was something coming, so we should have had more troops on the border. But that you can see that doesn't solve the problem. Hamas was building tunnels for 15 years. They thought there were 200 or 300 miles. Now it's 500 or 600 miles of tunnels. And you'll see in a moment, Hezbollah's been doing it since the 80s and 90s through bedrock. They don't even need to use superstructure to keep the roof from falling in like they do in Gaza. And so Seth has this great Twitter thread that he wrote today, and tried to get set up an interview with, I shouldn't say this because it never happens, but I've been writing back and forth to Seth, who's a friend, and he just says, we've got a problem. It's a conceptual problem with the Israeli military. He says this, over time, Hezbollah claims that this new equation, well, let me read the first thing is, the long-term question is which side benefits from this managed conflict that always falls short of a major war? Hezbollah maintains its position in Lebanon. Does it suffer major repercussions? Israel, in the meantime, becomes a battleground such that northern Israel has had to be evacuated for 10 months. Children will go to school for a second year away from their home, if they're going. Hezbollah achieves the turning of northern Israel into a contested region. Over time, Hezbollah claims this new equation gives it a right to attack northern Israel whenever it wants. As such, Hezbollah achieves the turning of Israel into kind of a security zone where it attacks at a time and place of its choosing. It is not deterred from those attacks because the response is proportionate and precise. By the way, he wrote this morning. He's amazing. I mean, he writes this stuff. It's like he's got all these extra words in him. I wonder how long his updates would be. Back in 2006, one Hezbollah attack that killed several soldiers led to a major war and then almost 20 years of relative peace. Hezbollah has rewritten the rules so that it can attack daily without leading to a major war. He's exactly right, and Amir Avivi was talking about this. The question is whether a lack of war benefits Israel or Hezbollah. Israel doesn't have to plunge all of the country into war. It comes to accept that rocket fire in the north is the new norm, like it came to accept this in the south after Hamas took over Gaza. There used to be an Israeli military doctrine, and all the guys in the leadership of the IDF, the security establishment, even in the political establishment, said, if they launch one rocket, we're going to war. Hezbollah launched 8,000, 10,000. Hezbollah's launched 8,000 since October 7th. And Seth Frantzman is exactly correct. Why is this being allowed to happen? So we can go and we can have all these arguments about what they should have done on October 7th or on October the 6th. But the problem was years and decades in the making. And in Hezbollah in Lebanon, they've had 40 years to get ready. Now, there's been First and Second Lebanon Wars. That was a problem. But the Second Lebanon War was just one attack. Now we have 8,000 rockets shot into Israel, and Israel responds today, but nobody should think that it's over. That's insanity. So Seth says this is also a shift from the third circle doctrine and campaign between the wars that developed from around 2014 to 2023. Instead of Israel waging a war far away in the third circle, now the war in the Galilee and the Gaza envelope area, increasingly in the North and West Bank, is growing into a Gaza-like conflict. There have been hundreds and hundreds of attacks and injuries and a lot of people killed in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria, over terror things. And that, from what people tell me that I talk to in Israel, that area could explode anytime. It could turn into Gaza. And I have friends who live down there, and they say, I can see one of the big mosques across the field from my house. No fence in between here. We used to have the people come and do work in our town that we live in our development. That's not going to happen in the lifetime of me, my children, and maybe my grandchildren. That has a big economic impact. So this is a, I'm not sure how to say this correctly. This is it. This was round one, but we haven't heard the final bell on this. Israel has to do something. The West needs to do something. We can't have what these morons are doing in the UK, saying that if you tweet against these people that do this, you're going to prison for years. You're going to be picked up, arrested, tried, convicted, and sentenced in 2 weeks to years in prison. Show me where else in the world that happens. This is the West. In England, the home of the Magna Carta. And police chief in London is saying, hey, if you guys do it in America, we'll indict you here and we'll come over there and extradite you back to face trial in our country. Now, do you think the people that were in Chicago this week are going to stop that? Really? Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Kamala O'Harris, I would call her now. It's crazy. The proxies have suffered setbacks, Seth says. Hamas lost 17,000 or more fighters and has lost some key areas of Gaza, but not all. Hezbollah has lost more than 400 and thousands of launchers. The Houthis, though, are mainly intact, as are the Iraqi militias and the Syrian militias, which include a big chunk of Hezbollah fighters. Is anything been done with them? I don't think we grasp the gravity of the situation that we live in right now. My view, southern Lebanon needs to look like Gaza or Mosul when this is over. There's no other way. And I would suggest, it's easy for me to make a suggestion because I'm not in charge of anything. What are they going to do? I'd suggest they have to go all the way to Beirut. They have to go into the Bekaa Valley, where Hezbollah is massively embedded. This is war. This is the beginning of World War. This is what things were talked about that were prophesied. Now, listen, I think Israel prevails, but there's a lot of pain in the interim. Ben Gurion Airport was shut down this morning. All flights diverted. Now it's reopened, but What are people supposed? Okay, Ben Gurion was closed for a few hours, but now it's open, so everything's okay. It's not. Hezbollah is deeply embedded. I mentioned a little bit of this last week. There was a big videos put up by Al-Sharq Al-Aswat newspaper, the Arabian newspaper published in the UK in the Arabian language. These are the tunnels that they've built, and they talk about we're going. This is Hezbollah's own words. When you take the Arab translation, it says from Kiryat Shimona in the north to Eilat on the Red Sea. That's what our goal is. That's what we're going to do it. It's a facility the size of a city, and this has been known for a long time. This is a French article back in 2016 or 2017 in Liberation newspaper in France, talking about Hezbollah's tunnels. So we're now, 7-8 years beyond that? And how are the tunnels going? Look at this video.
ذروة التهديد بحرب واسعة على الجبهة اللبنانية الإسرائيلية تنظر إسرائيل
If you're an Arabic speaker, I apologize. But this is from the Al-Sharq Al-Aswat website. And I want you to look at these tunnels that they've built. By the way, Alma Research did a great job. Years ago, they looked at these tunnels and they said, wait a minute, these are just like North Korean tunnels. It's the same technology and construction methods. You see, what do you see there in that picture? Where you see a guy walking? No, you see railroad tracks, right? And the video, there's a place where it says, I'll move it forward to the place because this is about 8 or 10 minutes long. And you see how they have these entrances? And so what they're doing is they're bringing the rockets there, they're putting them at this hole in the ground and shooting rockets. Then Israel's got to find that. So it's a very, very difficult task. But there's one spot in here, and so this is the Liberation paper from back in 2016, 2017, 2018, talking about this. And so here you're going to see in this video, this Hezbollah video, right? Do you see all those lines? So what Hezbollah says, hey, listen, you heard about the Hamas metro? We're many times that size. We've got subways, tunnels, and everything, all the way across Lebanon. Some believe that those, and some go in, some of them have been, broken up over time because they go into Israel. But at some point, Israel has to make the political military decision that we can't live like this. How do we resolve this situation? And let me ask you this question. Does this situation sound like a situation where somebody could come on the scene and say, I've got the answer to this? Is that more or less probable than it was on October 7th? I think if you don't say that it's much more probable, you're not paying attention to what's going on. Look at this. This is their video. Look at the layers of this. And they even go ahead and here where they have, in the Arabic translation, there is bigger than the Hamas metro. But the levels, and they're way deep, as I told you weeks ago, the tunnels in Hamas are too deep for bunker busters to get to them. How do you get to them? How do you destroy them? How do you take out the people that are running this? Big problem. I'm going to refer you again. I'm going to play a couple minutes of this. I've been trying to do this for 3 weeks now. Caroline Glick had a conversation with Tony Badrin. He wrote a great article talking about, he's from Lebanon, by the way. He's now a U.S. citizen, great security guy, but he wrote an article, The Ottoman American Empire. And what was the Ottoman Empire known for? It was known for being sort of tolerant of the people who had different views throughout the Ottoman Empire. By the way, That empire's never coming back. But the Americans, we think we can do that. So for years, everybody, you need to go to Tablet Magazine and get this article by Tony Badrin. It's free, Ottoman American Empire. And he said, and so you've got this map up here. To understand the dynamics of the American-Iranian blueprint for Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, we need to look at the late Ottoman Empire and its relationships with the great powers of Europe. This guy is brilliant. Here's just a couple minutes of him talking with Caroline Glick. I'm going to play this, and then I'm going to start another, well, never mind.
Harris, whatever, but that's what that faction, this ruling faction in Washington, this ruling faction in the Democratic Party, that's what it tied itself to. It tied itself to those guys.
So, okay. So, all right. So you, I went like this because my brain, I have to like keep it inside my skull because it's about to explode. So I should be wearing a helmet right now just to protect. But anyway, so to prevent my brain from exploding by what you said, and there are tens of thousands of Hezbollah forces along the border with Israel. That, you know, the reason why we have 80,000 internal refugees from the northern border communities is because we were afraid that they were going to turn Avivim into Be'eri and Metula and Kiryat Shmona into Kfar Aza and Sderot. So that's why everybody's in hotels and has been for the past 10 months. And the question is, you know, none of this deal that's on the table is going to let anybody go home, because the deal has no implication for Hezbollah's forces, does it? And I mean, given everything that we know about the LAF, the Lebanese Armed Forces, and UNIFIL, and now everything that we understand about the American policy, nobody's going to enforce this.
That's on the video.
They're not dead. They're, you know, the ones that haven't been killed are alive, and they're winning. And so the threat against Israel, the actual concrete threat on the ground, boots on the ground, rockets in their hands, missiles in their hands, it's still there. It's unaffected. And in fact, it's empowered and entrenched even more because the United States is now openly siding with them and equipping them. Because like you said, they're going to give them 10,000 more troops, presumably with arms, with artillery shells, with everything, with nods, with night goggles and all the rest of it. So they're going to have all of this advanced equipment, courtesy of American taxpayers. And they're going to 7 kilometers north of Litani, and anyway, that's not going to be enforceable. And anyway, they live there.
Right.
So the threat against Israel is going to be expanded, not diminished. Is that correct?
In strategic terms, yes. So here's what the U.S. is offering, right? It's basically a shell game, right? So what the United States is offering is the following. We're going to return to a October 6 reality, or in the case of Lebanon, October 7, I suppose, reality, whereby everyone is going to pretend that, we will do some visual trickery, like we might remove one of those environmental observation posts that Hezbollah set up, right? And instead, it's going to be an LAF post, whatever. Okay, and we're going to say that Hezbollah is no longer there. They're 10 kilometers away, right? And so you're not going to have anything visible there. But it's basically just because it's based on Hezbollah's decision not to attack or whether to attack. Shab'a Farms may be an exception. We're not quite sure yet. But
that's
basically,
the Golan Heights.
You are going to end this round and freeze in place, and it'll be quiet like it was in the lead up to October 7th. That's what's on offer. Plus, except for what the strategic reality that has taken shape over the last 9 months, which is that Hezbollah has shown that it can empty northern Israel of its inhabitants, right? It can operate under American protection that prevents Israel, and also Israel itself may be self-deterred because we can open another front somewhere else that preoccupies Israel, so it makes Israel reticent about whether or hesitant about whether or not to open a second front. But it doesn't matter. The point is, we can depopulate northern Israel, we can open a front and not incur massive destruction from an Israeli retaliation, all under American protection, and then we can call up the Americans to ratify this strategic reality in some sort of an agreement.
So, by the way, I'm looking at the keyboard in the background. I expect Tony Badrin to sort of turn around and go, dun, 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 with a sort of drama. But he's right. I mean, you need to read that article because that will tell you that this is a long-standing problem. Francisco Gil White, who I interviewed a few months ago, now I guess he's written about this as well, that Iran somehow has worked its way into the U.S. government. And by the way, who is Kamala Harris saying is going to be her Middle East advisor or liaison to the Jews? A radical, Hamas-supporting, Palestinian-supporting guy. It's insanity. By the way, she's scrubbing her biography. Do you know this? She grew up in Berkeley. Now, what do you think of when you think of Berkeley? Bunch of commie leftists, right? So now she's from Oakland. Like, that makes me feel a lot better, given what's gone on in Oakland over the past few years. So Caroline Glick on JNS TV, get it. It's a few weeks old now, but it's still as relevant now as it was then. And this is what they need to do. This is what they did to the port in Yemen. They need to do this all the way to Beirut. They may need to do this to Karg Island. But they do this to Karg Island, who's going to be ticked off? China. China's getting their oil. They don't have oil of their own. They're getting their oil from Iran at a reduced price, by the way. So if that oil leaves the market, now China's got even more economic problems than they had before. I'm just telling you, as this thing spirals into a very serious world war very quickly. Remember the game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon? Like everybody in Hollywood within 6 moves, he knows somebody who knew somebody who is within 6 moves of Kevin Bacon. It's a famous internet game because he was in a lot of movies. He knew a lot of people. His wife worked, she was an actress as well. She is an actress. And I'm just telling you, I would say 2 degrees of world war is where we're at. But this is what I think the Bible said would happen in the end times. Jonathan Spire has a great article. Netanyahu won't hand Hamas an easy victory. By the way, Netanyahu's popularity is going up, but a lot of people still think he should leave. The issues thwarting agreement, according to the latest reports, are Israel's insistence on maintaining control of the Philadelphia corridor. That's the border along Egypt. By the way, Hamas, Gaza have a border with Egypt. They found 200 tunnels. Some of them like this, you can drive trucks and jeeps and tanks through. How do you think that Egypt didn't know that all this stuff was going into Gaza? That they were turning it into this base? So, Hezbollah likely to strike if Hamas rejects compromise deal. So, in one way, you could view the Hezbollah attack this morning as a negotiating ploy. This is a map of Gaza. And so Israel's saying, okay, look, we're taking over Philadelphia corridor. We're taking over this corridor in the middle. And other people are saying, we need to take over the whole northern third of this place. And how do you think that's going to go with the people in charge around the world? And there was an article someplace. Oh, it was on this war. The EU finally takes the Red Sea crisis seriously. You know what? I will sleep so much better tonight knowing that the EU is involved now. And by the way, what are they doing? Nothing. It's just a lot of talk. The guy who was in charge of the security, he resigned this week. He admitted that he was wrong. And I don't have time to play the great Natasha Hausdorff. I will do that later. I want to finish up with one story which I think is significant. This guy is the founder of Telegram. Telegram is probably the last pure free speech platform on planet Earth. He's a multi-billionaire, Russian, French origin, left Russia because Putin was mad at him. Today he was flying somewhere from Azerbaijan. He stopped in France. They have a warrant for his arrest, which is only operative in France, and they grabbed him, and he's now sitting in jail, facing a lot of charges. Now, a lot of people are saying they're trumped up charges. He was interviewed a few months ago by Tucker Carlson. Here's just a short clip of that. I promise I will be done with this.
To be fair, you have now Twitter or X, that seemingly becoming more pro freedom of speech. It's a great development, and things are starting to change, it seems. We love the fact that Elon bought Twitter. We thought it was a great development for a number of reasons. First reason is just innovation. You could see X trying a lot of things. Some of them will turn out to be mistakes. Some of them will work, but at least they're trying to innovate. That's something we didn't have outside of Telegram and a few other companies in this industry for the last 10 years. What X is trying to do is innovation, trying different things, trying to give power to the creators, trying to get the ecosystem economy going. Those are all exciting things. And I think we need more companies like that. I don't know if it's good for humanity that Elon is spending so much time on Twitter, making it better, but it's definitely good for the social media industry.
So this was an interesting article, Technology Quarterly, which is published by The Economist magazine in Europe, Watching the Watchers. Kind of interesting language that they're using, and they're the ones who, The Economist, remember all those things they put up the world in 2018, the world in 2019, 2020, 21, and all those kind of cryptic symbols that they use, and some of which it seems like, how did they know that was going to happen? So this will be comforting to you. This is the vice presidential candidate running with Kamala Harris, and this is what he says about free speech.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Are you going to sleep better tonight? Elections, and look, there's things going on in the Republicans. They've gone way soft on abortion. I do not like that. You need to do, what your conscience tells you on that particular subject. Now, talk more about this. Energy, the terrifying scale of the Green Revolution, an article at the UK Spectator. Great magazine, by the way. Lot going on, folks. Psalm 83, Ezekiel 38, 39, forming, wars, rumors of wars. So anybody wish they could go back to the good old days of mid-July this year, where it was calmer? Anyway, look, you don't need to be scared. You need to be right in your relationship with the Lord. That's the only hope for this world, for this planet, for everybody, every living person here. So let's pray. I tried to do a midweek update with the great Natasha Hausdorff, UK Lawyers for Israel Charitable Trust. She's a brilliant lawyer. Well, that's kind of redundant, isn't it? Anyway, very, very intelligent. She will lay out the legal case under international law for the existence of the state of Israel within the borders that it wants to be in. So let's pray. Lord, thanks so much for your word. Thanks for giving us ideas, information about what was going to happen so that we would remain calm, but always focused on our mission to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with those around us. And we pray that you will give us opportunities to do that, and that you will make us wise as serpents and harmless as doves as we navigate the world in these days. Bless us this week in Jesus' name. Amen.